No, I apologize, Joe. I didn't
go
mean to
ahead.
do that. Through you to Rachel, I absolutely agree with you when it comes to the drivers and what they're able to handle. That's not the point of this whatsoever. So perception, I agree with you. We can't create policies around perception, but absolutely, as a committee, it's our responsibility to take a look at every single policy and say, what is our risk of liability if something does happen? And that's all I'm looking at here. So I do, through you, Mr. Chair, I do agree that that our drivers are doing a phenomenal job, and I will also defend them. But to me, speaking, it is just my feeling that having children, your own children on the bus, it does create more of a distraction, or it could, I'm sorry, not more, but it could create more of a distraction.
Before we take a vote to table, the folks on the policy review committee, because I'm not there, but I'd just like to get some clarity. In your opinions, those of you that were there, Dr. Rabinovich, you were there also, is this thing presented with the best possible information? Do we have all the information we need? How many people are involved? What the status is? What the opinions are of the drivers? And we know what the recommendation was of Mr. Tatro. So I guess my question is, did the policy review committee come up with this policy with the best of information?
I believe so. I think it was only at that meeting was Dr. Rabinovich and myself were the only two at that meeting.
Okay.
My opinion is absolutely.
Okay.
And if I can add, I mean, I believe almost everybody on this group has served at one time or another on the policy review committee. And so there are 10 people, and many of them have been on the policy review committee, God bless them, for many years. And I recall one particular member saying that each time they've reviewed this particular policy, there is not unanimity. And they would ask the transportation coordinator or manager to be there, and they would then answer the questions, and that's what happened in this particular one. Mr. Tatro brought some new language from policies that are used in other districts, and the discussion was had, and now it comes before this group, which is the group to make the final decision. By all means, if you feel you need more and you want Jeff to be here, not a problem. But just like when we did the medical ones, we had the lead nurse come and answer the questions of the 10 people on the policy review committee so that they could, do some of the wordsmithing and so forth, and then bring it to this group. I think we have discussed this, and we've gone over it. It was difficult. We discussed it at 2 meetings.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, let's, Jeff?
General comment. If we start making policies based upon the number of people that it's going to impact one way or the other, instead of based on the merit of the policy in general, I think we run into trouble. I don't want to know how many drivers this impacts. I have to be concerned with how it impacts children and parents, not drivers. And I say that with the greatest respect for the drivers, and I have met them, and I know some of them, and I think they do a great job. But I can't take that into consideration when I'm making policy. Secondly, this policy, to me, almost negates itself by the following. It literally lists criteria that have to be true before this privilege can be granted, and 4 out of the 6 criteria are judgment calls. That concerns me greatly. It's a judgment call whether someone is capable of doing certain things, whether someone is ill, whether someone, et cetera, et cetera. When you have a policy that requires somebody, the driver, his or herself, the manager who's got lots of other things to do and may not know the child, I mean, you don't want four separate judgments to have to be made in order to enforce a policy. It's just fraught with risk. So, and the final thing I'll say is, when I was chairman of the Policy Review Committee during my first term, this was still there, and I'm concerned that we just keep tabling it, and it just continues as a policy, which I think is wrong. So while I will certainly go along with tabling it one more, I think we finally need to make a decision, a definitive decision. Whatever it is, I'll live with it, but I can assure you that my amendment will be to simply not allow this, period, end of story.
Well, I can assure you, under my chairmanship, it will not be kicked down the road. All right, let's vote on this motion to table. Bring it back to the Policy Review Committee. We heard the motion, there was a second to table it, and I don't know if we're going to bring it back to the Policy Review Committee, but basically it's to bring the Director of Transportation to a meeting to discuss it. In the meantime, I'm sure it can be discussed at the Policy Review Committee level. All right, all in favor of tabling this till a future date, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No?
No.
No.
Sorry.
All right, let's vote on it. So, let's vote on the policy. Is voted up or voted down? If voted down, it goes back to the Policy Review Committee. Is that correct?
Well, that's a good question.
No,
So, if,
Go ahead.
excuse me, wouldn't the one that's in place would remain in place?
and that's my concern.
Because you're the policy, the policy that's in place.
Then we can-
Not this one.
Rather than table it, we can kick it back for revision, for further revision to the Policy Review Committee.
And there it will,
Well, I guess it's still tabled though, isn't it? See, when I said
Based on
that's not
what?
table, I didn't want to, I didn't want to kill it completely.
It goes back to the,
When you table, it's kind of like lost. But I want to bring it back, so that's why I voted against tabling. So maybe I voted wrong. But I wanted to go back to the Policy Review Committee. So if someone could make that motion, we could vote on that to kick this back to the
it
Policy.
was your
Review Committee.
intent with your vote to send it back there.
That's correct.
So I guess the parliamentarian will have to say we have to withdraw all those motions.
No?
No?
No.
Because we took a vote, yes?
We took a vote to table it. I don't want to table it. I wanted to go back to the Policy Review Committee.
You took a vote to table it, so then Mr. Tatro could come in.
Right.
And we shot that
Which
down.
failed.
Right, we don't want
However,
Mr. Tatro.
no.
We want to go back to the Policy Review Committee. That's why, I didn't think bringing Mr. Tatro here was going to do anything, because I think the best information's already out there.
I agree with you.
So that's why I voted not to table it. So, but I do want it to go back to the Policy Review Committee, because there's enough concern over this policy that it will probably lose tonight, and we'd have no policy.
Well, I was,
If it loses tonight, we have no policy on this at all.
No, you do,
No,
you
we
have
do.
the policy that's in
Policy
place.
that's in
and
place
that's my concern.
goes
the one
back
that's in place.
until the next meeting.
Well, isn't that the policy we're reviewing, the policy that's in
No.
place?
No, no.
I'm
No.
confused then.
We're
The chairman's confused. Straighten me out. Go ahead, Jeff.
we're reviewing an amendment, a change, a series of changes to the existing policy. If this fails, then the existing policy stands.
Which is more liberal than this one.
Correct. Which
That's
is,
why I want it to go back to the Policy Review Committee.
would you accept a motion that would substantially change this policy, or is that counter to the tradition of allowing those kinds of things to come from the Policy Review Committee?
The reason I wanted to go back to the Policy Review Committee is a lot of what you said. A lot of these judgment calls, I don't know if that should be articulated in the policy itself. Make a decision whether or not we're going to allow children to be transported one way or the other. And I think that there are enough variables on this proposed policy that probably would warrant, believe it or not, another discussion at that level. And maybe they'll submit this as it is. I don't know. That's entirely up to the Policy Review Committee. But I think there has been enough question about it to warrant another look at it. So that's, but I can't make that motion because I'm the chair. So whatever you guys want to do.
I have a question for are they co-chairs? You guys co-chairs of the policy?
But to table it would be sort of like to kill it.
Yeah, so if it goes back, then it can be reviewed for like the perception and make sure that the,
My question to the chair of the policy review committee is...
Which is
Is that you,
Rachel.
Rachel? Okay. Do you think if it was sent back to the policy review committee, anything would change?
well, I wasn't at that meeting, because
Oh.
the dates of the meetings have now changed for me to attend, because it was on a day I couldn't attend,
Then
so.
I'll ask Rhonda, do you think anything's going to change if we send it back?
Of course. I think that the group would take the feedback from the committee and look at, and we're really only talking about one piece, which is the second paragraph underneath statement. That is, what I would want from this group is there anything else? I mean, besides, if we go back to the policy review committee and we say that it is the judgment of the school committee that we really shouldn't have a policy, that children shouldn't ride the buses, then that's what we would go back with and discuss, and then see what the recommendation was. But right now, it is what I would feel that we would go back to them with is, right now, looking at the policy, that there are 4 bullets underneath the statement section that are judgment calls, and the school committee have an issue with that. So let's discuss that section. And then from that, probably read through the rest and see if there's anything else that we feel that you all might have an issue with. So I would ask, though, here, are there any other sections from any member here that you would want the policy review committee to take a look at while we're there?
Mr. Chairman, for the sake of expediting this thing that has gone on for years,
Well, can I answer her question?
you're the chair.
No, she asked a specific question on what has to go back.
Sure.
And I just wanted to make a brief statement on that is, yeah, on my part, I'm not convinced one way or the other on this issue in terms of whether or not we should allow children to drive. I see the merit on both sides.
I have to agree with you that children should not drive the buses.
Ride, I'm sorry, ride, okay. So, you can bring that, go ahead, Jeff.
I would like to make a motion, a simple motion. If it gets voted down, that's fine, and then it makes sense to go back. But if it gets voted, it's supported, then there's no point in going back. So my motion would be for the policy to read, the policy of the Wareham Public Schools is to not allow its employee parents to bring aboard their children while driving the bus. Period.
Do I hear a second? The motion fails for lack of a
Okay,
second.
so that means we're going to have a policy, and then it makes sense to send it back.
I need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask for a point of clarification? Because we have 2 members of the school committee and the policy review committee that both voted against this for different reasons.
I didn't, no, it was myself and one other member of the policy review.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Rachel is, from what I'm gathering, believes that it should be a non-issue for bus drivers to have their children on the bus. And through you, Mr. Chair, Rhonda, on the other hand, feels that, correct me if I'm wrong, that is somewhat of a distraction.
I feel that there is an issue, yes.
So that's my point, is talk about a ball of confusion. I can't support this one, and none of us really have a clear,
I agree.
we're just going
I make a
we're going in
motion
circles here.
it go back to the policy review.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to send it back to the policy review for consideration. And can I be presumptuous enough to say that the next time this comes before us, we're going to have a vote? Mm-hmm. Good. All in favor?
Who seconded?
Rhonda seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 500. Oh, opposed? 410. Okay, phew, that took a long time. Sorry, guys. Thank you. All right, next.
Do you want to take?
They're all the medical.
Yep.
Policy for measuring Body mass index. Oh, I didn't take that in order, I'm sorry. For the meeting.
Sorry.
Which one you want?
Do you want me to go, I'll go in order of the meeting minutes, then we
Okay.
have all the meeting, emergency health procedures. There were really no changes